This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new and improved Sunday stream. Hopefully, this time with 100% less copyright claim. Oh boy, it has been a wild night. And by wild night, I mean I didn't sleep. Why didn't I sleep? I have no idea. I wish I could tell you some exciting adult-rated story about it or something, but there wasn't. I just could not get to sleep. So I wake up this morning, such as it was, in a haze. What kind of haze? Confusion. Confusion over what? Well, how to build an anti-racist organization. I still don't know, but hopefully we're going to find out this morning. Hope you are all doing well on this good morning, Sunday morning. Let's see, who is joining me this morning, by the way, as I try to gather my faculties, as it were. Arash, Ex-Bubba-Hotep, Matt Barnes, Funtime Bats, Spittlebuggies, Swirl Blue, Hi, M. Steve, Rotten Corpse, Resolute Germ, Keever Dam, Quinn the Cultist, Arc 210. Good morning to you all. A couple of notes first and foremost, and I'll be repeating these probably at the end. First, I am like 15 some odd subscribers away on my YouTube channel from 5,000. Now, while I don't really put that much stock or put that much weight into numbers and things, symbolically speaking, since I'm coming up on my 5th year being a YouTuber, it would be nice to hit 5,000 before then, and by all rights, I certainly will between now and October 11th. But otherwise, before then, and on the off chance it happens during the course of this stream, I just want to thank everybody for all of your support and attendance and participation and generosity and just everybody being so awesome these last nearly 5 years. I'll say this multiple times between now and when I'm done being a YouTuber, because I'm always grateful for you guys, and I really appreciate it. I hope in some way, shape, or form, I have made your lives more interesting, hopefully, at least, good, bad, or indifferent, as long as it's interesting. Secondly, programming note, tonight, Sunday night, at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, on this very channel, Sister Scribe will be joining me for our second drive-in theater public domain movie watch. And tonight's movie will be The Wasp Woman from 1959. Roger Corman, public domain. I've never seen it. I've heard of it. But yes, hopefully you'll join us for that. A full-length feature presentation with Sister Scribe and I doing our best MST3K impersonation while you can join along as well. So, all that being said, where are we? Well, what did we learn last week, everyone, in how to build a race... Was that a Freudian slip? How to build an anti-racist organization. Well, similar to the TEDx I did earlier this week with Sinatra Says, there were 5 steps. Although unlike the BRIC process, these 5 steps don't spell anything interesting unless you think CHIAM means something. And maybe it does. Chame? Chame is anyway. So the list they gave us of the 5 steps necessary to create an anti-racist organization were, for review, 1, create trust. 2, have courageous conversations. 3, increase social capital. 4, apply an equity lens. And 5, measure data and hold ourselves accountable. And holy cats. Brett Ide. Thank you. Thank you so very much. That's ridiculously generous of you. With the winky smiley face. Thank you. I don't know what to say. That's why I'm stumbling over my words right now. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please say something else so I have something to say back to you. That's... Thank you. I'll let my lack of verbiage speak for itself. Isn't that ironic? Don't you think? Moving on from that, if I am if I'm able to effectively. Okay. Let me stop myself from getting too emotional. Right. So where did we leave off? Well, our speakers had gone over details of how to create trust, which basically meant, what was it? Telling your subordinates that you're a bad communicator. And then secondly, how to have courageous conversations, where it had something to do with let's bring apology back. Make apology cool again. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, we start off at 24:07 of a 59-minute presentation. We are just about to go into the details of how to increase social capital, whatever that means. If you have not seen the first part of this, I would recommend you go watch that first before you come in here, because you might be lost. Even though I think we could pick any point during the course of this presentation, and even with preamble, we'd all be lost. But that being said, I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will continue.
Gamel, maybe we can loop back to the other aspects of anti-racist organization, having talked about trust and courageous conversations.
All right, you guys hear that? Loop back to the other parts of how to build an anti-racist organization. Let me know if you heard that, and then we will continue. Thank you again, Brett. It's not going to leave my mind anytime soon. Thank you so much. Let's see. Sounds good, says Zero the Hero 909. Spittlebuggy says, unfortunately, well, you can hear me. That's fortunate, right? Anyway, okay. We've done courageous conversations. Let's talk about how to increase social capital.
Yeah, so the third is increasing social capital. And just for those of you who are not familiar with the term social capital means, what social capital is really, it's about all of those small, sometimes big, kind of abstract things that help us in our lives be able to do whatever it is that we're trying to do. And
so micro progressions? Ooh, I think I just may have come up with my own white fragility term. I need to reverse engineer that into a book. Micro progressions.
And they help us succeed in whatever place that we are. And those things can be, from how long you've been in this location, seniority. They can be education. They can be language. Do you speak multiple languages? Is English your first language? It could be the relationships that we have. Who do you know? If you think right now, I want to do this big giant scale project thing, how can I get this done? And
so social capital is networking or people you know that can help you achieve an end. Is that what I'm hearing? Also, good luck on the moves, Albla. I'm reading there in the chat that you're making a move without air conditioning, which can't be fun, especially if you're in central Arizona. Oh, Lord. Best of luck. Keep yourself hydrated. Social capital, who you know and what they can do for you. Is that what I'm understanding?
all the things that come up in your head as the things that will help you to accomplish that project, those are usually all forms of social capital. And capital, literal capital money, is one of those things too.
Yes, I know that capital, literal money, is something that is high on your guys' mind in this industry. You know that I just read the other day, and it might be just numbers out in numbers land, but there was an estimate that diversity, equity, and inclusion as an industry is or is bound to be something like a $5.6 billion industry in the near future, if it isn't already. And all things considered, I could believe it.
And there's a lot of ways that people don't necessarily realize where they have gaps in those social capital things, right? Because it's a little bit of a, you don't know what you don't know.
That sounds very Donald Rumsfeld of you. Okay, so how do I fill the gaps in my social capital without it sounding gross?
Kind of aspect of something. I'll give you a great example.
Ooh, social spackle, maybe?
I'm Brazilian. I'm an immigrant, came to the US when I was 5 years old. My parents, had their education in Brazil. When I was applying to colleges, great student, all of those things, how many colleges did I apply to?
I don't know. Do I get a prize if I guess correctly? I'll say 8.
1.
Oh, God, I'm a failure.
Just 1. Why? Why would you do such a thing, right? Good student, all of these things, honor roll. Why would you only apply to one college?
Because you really wanted to get into that one college and you put all your eggs into one basket, which I really hope that's not the piece of advice you're getting across here.
Because I didn't understand what early admissions meant.
Oh, okay. Well, admitting to naivete is noble of you. Okay.
Right? I thought early admissions is you send in your application, you apply, and then everybody hears back from their early admissions people, and then you apply to the other places if you don't get it.
Okay, so you operated on a misunderstanding. Well, I mean, everybody's young once, I suppose. Thank you, Point Curation. A little late, legendary opening song. Isn't it, though? Isn't it, though? I am my own best composer. Thank you, Point. Also, everyone, and if he doesn't, he should, check out Point Curation's Etsy store with his original artwork and all that good stuff. He's got a lot of paintings that are really neat and at ridiculously affordable prices, especially if you're a viewer of this show or these shows, because he usually has a discount coupon for all you wonderful people. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, so you applied for one college because you didn't understand how applying for colleges worked. Okay.
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 I did not realize until like 2 days before the deadline
Mhm.
that wasn't true.
Oh,
And that I was going to miss applying to all the other colleges during this round.
okay. So you made a mistake. You realized your mistake, and too late. You will hopefully learn from your mistake. Okay. Well, first off, before we get to the rest of her story, I hope she made it into her one college, that she lucked out, and all of that was effectively moot. That's fine. What does this have to do with social capital? That's what I'm waiting for. And thank you, Bubba Hotep. So you were a good student, but never talked to your counselor. Got it. Yeah, it just seems a little odd that, you wouldn't ask for instruction. I mean, she knew how to apply to a college, but she hadn't done any research ahead of time as to, okay. I can believe someone barreled in without knowing all the details. I can believe it. Regardless of where she came from, everybody makes mistakes. It's fine.
I could have potentially had an entire gap year by accident. Okay. And
potentially, so you didn't. So you got into your college of choice. Okay, well, again, congratulations, I'm assuming.
How could I possibly not know that, you think? I went to a good school.
Yeah.
I was surrounded by friends who applied to 10, 15 different colleges.
Yeah.
They weren't all keeping a secret from me, right? They weren't like conspiring with each other. Don't tell Gamel what early admissions means.
Yeah.
They couldn't imagine that I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, okay, because that's not their responsibility.
Right?
Right. You're not. Please do not tell me that you're going to blame the people around you for assuming that you were responsible for yourself.
But I also didn't have a counselor that went and found me, talked to me about what applying meant and all of these other things.
Found you. Please do not blame everybody else for your mistake.
And guided me through that process. And I didn't have parents who had previously applied to colleges in America and knew what that meant, right?
So your lack of initiative and curiosity is everybody else's fault? Really? And I'm being sincere here. Please do not tell me that's where this is going.
So I had a social capital gap that potentially could have had an entire lifelong impact on me. Right?
Right.
So what does that mean now when you translate it to a business world and to your organizations?
I don't know. Constantly look for excuses for your own mistakes and blame it on others for not informing you of things that you should have been able to find out for yourself. I don't know.
Oh, wait. Gamel, before you go on, let me do my college for a second.
Well, now. Okay, ambush white woman.
Sure.
So we like to do this. We do this when we train.
We like to do this when we train. What, interrupt people when they're speaking? What was that about communication skills again that you were complaining about in the first part? Jesus.
I was a senior in high school. I was a terrible student.
I can't believe it.
I hope my kids are not watching this. I was a terrible student. I was kind of an out of control teenager.
Oh yeah, you look like a wild child. Oh boy.
And my guidance counselor had to find me in the school, like literally like hunt me down and find me somewhere.
Your counselor hunted you down. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Cenk Uygur, right? Yeah, if I could play that little bit of video every time someone says right during these things, the videos would end up being an extra 3 hours long. Really. I mean, I'd put them in my older videos and some of my newer ones just as a joke, as a little stinger. But, and I've conditioned myself reflexively to imagine Cenk saying that every time someone does one of their asides, right? But yes, I'm right there with you, Mike. Maybe someday I can integrate that into the show more effectively. Much to everyone's torture.
To try to get me to apply to colleges. And I applied to several colleges, even though I was not the kind of student who was really ready to go to college.
But you got in because of your white privilege, obviously. Thank you, Ex-Bubba Hotep. Wait. This hasn't been about me for a bit. I know, right? It's like all of a sudden, whoa, wait, I need to talk now. Can I talk about my college? Yeah, sure. Remember, guys, this lady is a supervisor or something, a leader or something. This is how you lead. You cut off people when they're talking.
I would have been really well served by a gap year and made sure that I could apply. And so what I think is that is also a great example of racism. I knew it. Your counselor hunted you down and you had all of these options and you could have done with a gap year because of racism. Oh boy. Oh boy. Tell me how this is all coming back to racism. Right? Because I was white and because I had some class privilege, other white people were helping me do something that I couldn't and maybe shouldn't have been doing myself.
Okay, so just so we're clear here, the implication is, in contrast to the story of the first speaker, her situation was the result of racism. Her friends were not telling her about what admissions is, early admissions. There was no counselor coming after her because of racism. She was left out of the loop on what early admissions meant because of racism. Okay? Just so you know. Even though she said it wasn't that everybody was just like trying to keep information from her, they just assumed that she knew, at least from her interpretation. But now we're told by the white lady that actually it was racism that benefited her and obviously was a detriment to the first speaker. Just so you know. The Spanish Inquisition. Ha! I bet you didn't expect me. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Our chief tools are fear and surprise. Surprise and fear. Now, hit her with the comfy cushions. That was a paraphrase, but you get me. Thank you, Spinach Inquisition. I know, I said Spanish, but I couldn't help myself. Okay, tell me again how you're so much more not racist for bringing this up.
And even though as a student, I wasn't the kind of student who should be applying to college yet necessarily, Gamel was that kind of student, was the kind of student that any college would love to have, and no one was helping her.
No one was helping her. No one was helping her because she needs help because of racism. And sorry, who jumped to the conclusion? Who decided to jump in and interject this? I mean, at worst, our first speaker was leaning on a lack of personal responsibility for her woes. But no, you piped in to let her and everybody know that you understand that you're the beneficiary of white privilege and she's a victim of racism. Just so everybody knows, our lady here is on point. She had to cut in, guys. She couldn't let it go any longer without letting everybody know that she knows what's going on.
Let me jump in here for a minute because someone in the chat noted skin color as social capital.
Of course they did.
And I remember when I applied to college a million years ago.
A million years ago. Okay. And not to belittle her own experience, but were the laws and society different back then?
I actually played the race card. And I said, well, and remember, this is like during the late 60s, early 70s. And I said, I'm Black. I'm bright. Basically, I'm young, I'm gifted, I'm Black. You need me. You should admit me to your school. I mean,
well, you know, given the times that you were probably growing up in, I wouldn't blame you for using every tool at hand to succeed. But times have changed. So, do you think that today that is an appropriate avenue for other students to pursue in looking for opportunities in their scholastic career? And I'm asking that sincerely, you know, rhetorically, obviously. I wonder if our speaker thinks that the affirmative action approach is an appropriate one.
And that was really the theme of my essay, because you have to write an essay on why you think why you're applying and why you should be admitted.
Okay, so back when you were going into school, you used race as a, I don't know, affirmative defense, let's say, of your advancing into college. You gave, well, social weight and academic value to your skin color. Okay.
So I actually used my skin color as social capital, in the sense that I thought, you know, I would be an asset to NYU in this case.
Yes.
But in response to what's in the chat, when they talk about skin color, more related to our conversation now, can you, Amy or Gamel, talk about, you know, skin color as a social asset?
Oh, I'm sure Amy is going to be overjoyed to talk about skin color as a social asset.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's a term called colorism.
Yes, there is a term called colorism. What does that mean exactly?
Which, again, those of you not familiar, it is kind of what it sounds like, right? So this is not just like race-based discrimination, but
well, actually, it is race-based discrimination in the sense that within a given racial demographic, there is then a sort of social order within that demographic based on skin tone. So, for example, in Black communities, oftentimes, the lighter your skin tone, the more attractive you are, let's say. Okay. Or if you believe that, let's say you believe that's not necessarily inherent, but if you believe that someone within your own racial demographic looks better or is more attractive or is more valuable or something based on their skin tone, that is quote unquote colorism. So what does this have to do with anything?
this is within groups. Just
Demographics. Demographics. Not groups. Racial demographics.
discrimination based on skin tone.
Yes.
And it also falls in line with the overall structural concepts of racism, where
It is racism of a kind. It has a different word for it because it does fall, it's specific to racial demographics, but the mechanisms are exactly the same. That's really all you need to know. It's just a sort of a subcategory of racism, if you want to call it that.
in our society, we prioritize whiteness or as close to whiteness as possible, right?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. Okay? Someone could value darker skin over lighter skin, and that would still be colorism. It's just, there's no reverse colorism, just like there's no reverse racism. If you value someone on the basis of their skin color, more or less, that is racism and or colorism. It doesn't matter which direction it's going.
right? And so, the darker skin tone, the more negative impacts on your access to things and all of that. And there can be discrimination within groups related to that. And you can see that actually recently with some of the controversy around the movie In the Heights.
Oh yes, In the Heights. So this was the the Manuel, I have something, Manuel Miranda. Is that? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he did a movie about, was it Puerto Ricans, I think in Brooklyn or something, and there was a whole bunch of controversy in that none of the people in the movie, according to some colorists, looked appropriate to their role and or race and or location based on the movie, which is totally appropriate these days, of course. Of course.
Where it's a movie that is a majority, almost all Latino cast, but it's about, a very specific population that has.
Texas Attorney General Secret Agent Lin-Manuel. That's what I was forgetting. I was like, my brain was thinking there's something else, so my apologies. Lin-Manuel Miranda.
A Black Latino, a large segment of the population is Black Latinos, and they didn't cast any Black Latinos
as major characters.
As major
characters. In the background.
Yeah, that was the big controversy. So the correct skin color was not reflected in the production, according to people who really, really care about skin color. And there's a word for people that really, really care about skin color.
Right.
Yeah, and major characters. And there's a great quote by, and I'm forgetting the name of the actress, but I'm picturing her, but I can't remember the name of the actress. Where she's an Afro-Latino woman, and she said that when she started acting, she learned very quickly that Hollywood in America likes its Latinos to look Italian and to not look like me.
Yeah.
Rita Moreno.
Well, that wasn't the actress who said that, but
yeah, she's Puerto Rican. She's
Yeah.
not Afro Black
Latina.
And okay, and all of this has what to do with increasing social capital? Oh, right. Sorry, I forgot, because the chat asked if skin color was an example of social capital, and we're really having to dwell on skin color as social capital, right?
And so it's a complicated place, right? And I'm a person that's a good example of that. I'm a lighter skin tone, but also my facial features are not as close to whatever a white dominant culture would be. So
I don't know if it's just me, but prior to her telling me anything about her background, I would have a very difficult time figuring out if I cared what her ethnic origins are. Okay.
People know I'm not white, but they don't really necessarily know where I'm from or all these things.
I guess I don't know what people know. I guess it all depends on how much value you put on it.
And so I get a lot of confusing kind of reactions to me in that way. And so there are places where people don't, where there are impacts to me where I am seen in this other category as not white. And then there are other places where I have more access to things because I'm a lighter skin tone.
So which is it? Where is it? Where is the line of demarcation where this is a disadvantage to you, but then an advantage to you? Are you both privileged and oppressed at the same time? I guess. What things are denied you? I would love an example. I mean, maybe there are. I don't know. But without specificity, I have nothing to sink my teeth into.
You know what I mean? And that can be complicated. And as Kelly's example kind of shows too, social capital is very context-based.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
What is it that you're trying to do? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And therefore, it's going to let you know which social capital is going to be the most valuable at that time.
Right.
Now, wait. Go back to your own story. I mean, and I don't blame you because Interrupter Ambush Amy over there decided to cut you off. But your situation, your primary example of a social capital situation was you're not understanding what early admissions meant, and there being a wealth of information around you that you did not think to access, and other people did not think to tell you. that could have assisted you. Okay. So what would have been your solution to that? How is that a social capital situation? And what would be the solution? I mean, why drop it right there? Come back to that. Would you? Because I'm curious. Keeverdam. Hi, and thanks, Mr. Tickle Trunk. I clicked on the wrong thing because chat moved. But hi, Keeverdam. But Mr. Tickle Trunk, thank you so much. Right. I really should put the Chenk thing in here as a little stinger at some point. If only to use it occasionally, not all the time. If I used it every time, we'd be fair forever. Okay, anyway, yeah, social capital, skin color, what?
And that's actually a great way to kind of segue back into how do you apply it into your organization, right?
Yeah, yes. That's why we're here. How do we apply this to our organization? Tell me how we apply social capital, specifically skin color, to an organization that operates in the United States under certain civil rights laws.
Right? Because organizations, the idea behind this is, what does it take to succeed in your organization?
Yes.
What is the end goal? Like,
yes.
right? What
increasing the bottom line for the investors. I mean, unless you're a nonprofit, and then it's like increase the amount of money or services you're providing to your, area of choice. Right?
does success look like in that organization? Is it being a manager? Is it being in senior leadership?
Oh, what's your personal goal? Okay.
Or is it having a high number of clients? Is it meeting certain productivity targets or revenue generation, right?
It could be all of those things, one of those things, or none of those things. Okay. How does social capital help me improve any one of those things?
However your organization defines success, think about that and then reverse engineer it.
Think about how my organization defines success and reverse engineer it. Okay, wait, are you talking about the organization or are you talking about me and my personal goals? Because you kind of vacillated between the two ideas there. But okay, my organization. Reverse engineer my organization's definition of success. Increasing the value of the company to the shareholders. Reverse engineer that. Make more money.
For what does it take to get there?
Well, yeah, okay. That has nothing specifically to do with social capital. It depends on the kind of business. What's your business model? What is your goal? What is your mission statement? Okay, could you give me an example, please?
Okay. And then when you think about what does it take to get there, say, all right, how is it possible that people in this organization are not necessarily going to have those things to get to that level of success?
What things?
And what barriers are in place?
What?
And whatever those barriers are, think about then how to address them.
What? No, none of that makes any sense. Think of what defines success, then think how to get there. Well, if I knew the exact recipe of how to get there, what?
In a way that's going to fill in those gaps.
Which came first, the business or the business plan?
That the society at large is creating in that social capital.
What?
Right? So a great example within Wayside is that we have, for us, again, we're a mental health organization.
Okay, you're a mental health organization. Okay, so presumably, and I'm happy to be corrected, success is defined as improving people's mental health, right?
And behavioral health organization. And so we're going to need our staff to get access to being independently licensed.
Well, shouldn't they be independently licensed before you get them, before they even join the organization? Or, okay, so you have an internal program that helps employees get licensed even if they are not currently licensed. Is that it?
an independently licensed clinician of some kind. There's 3
Okay.
organizations for that.
Okay.
And that's going to be something that's going to be necessary and helpful
Yes.
to then becoming a manager, becoming a supervisor, right? So the barrier there is going.
Wait. Is that the goal of the org? Please stop conflating goals of organizations versus goals of individual employees. Okay. If the goal of the organization is to improve people's mental health, then yes, making sure or providing resources for your employees to increase their own knowledge of mental health practice or clinicians or whatever, that makes sense. Okay. Their personal ambitions within the company are a separate thing. If they take the initiative to improve their education in order to achieve a higher standing in the company, well, good for them. Is that inherently a betterment to the goals of the organization? I mean, maybe, but oh man.
Going to be independent licensure to the success of a promotion for a supervisor or a manager for certain parts of our organization. So how do we fill in that gap? Well, what are the reasons that someone can get independently licensed or not, right? They have to take a test.
Okay, they have to take a test. So you provide them resources for studying prior to the test.
Who does well on standardized tests in our society?
People who study ahead of time?
People with tremendous amounts of time and money to study for those tests.
No. I knew more than one person in college who worked 2 jobs because they didn't have any money, and consequently had less time than I did because of my circumstances, and they studied and they succeeded. It is not impossible. It's a matter of working within the boundaries that circumstances have put in front of you. But okay, you want to assume everything about everybody.
Okay. So
And
think
who
about
may have tutors and
tutors, right? So think about the SATs, right? Who does well? The kids can do the SAT prep, who have tutors, who have the time to study. They're not dealing with other pressures in their life, like having to have multiple jobs.
Are you kidding? What world did you grow up in? I had a job in college. And like I said, I knew people who had more than one job, and they did. It wasn't easy. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a cakewalk for anybody, but that's the whole point. You work within the boundaries and you do the best that you can. Now, some kids did not succeed. Either they gave up or they couldn't make the cut or whatever. But that's because there is no certainty in outcomes these days or ever, despite the fact they keep talking about equity and so on. It is not impossible. Everybody's situation is different.
Right? In order to survive. So for us, what we did is instead of having our employees go out externally to access these kinds of trainings, right, and test prep courses, that would be either out of their pocket or maybe possibly out of this educational assistance account that we have for our staff. We said, we're not going to have people spend their individual money or their personal money on this.
Okay, first and foremost, if this is where it's going, and I think it is, kudos to them for providing their employees with the options and the resources necessary to achieve these certifications without having to hit their own pocketbook. Okay, that's great. Also, it is nothing new. Continuing education programs in businesses to help enrich their employees' skills and abilities in order to then enrich the company is nothing new. Now, that's not to diminish their own program. But what does this have to do with building an anti-racist organization? What does this have to do with social capital? I mean, if you're calling your employees social capital or human capital, as I've heard elsewhere, okay, I guess that makes sense. You're developing your human capital for the benefit of the organization. Fine. What does that have to do with skin color?
Wayside is going to bring in the test prep course to our location. We're going to pay for it ourselves directly.
Yes.
And we're going to have it during work hours and pay our staff to attend the training.
Again, kudos to them for doing that. That's a great thing for companies to do to help develop their employees of skills and abilities without, infringing on their own costs and time. Fine. Great. I'm all for it. What does this have to do with, et cetera, et cetera?
So you're not going to miss getting your wages for that day in order to then go to the test prep course, okay? And we have our staff allow our staff to come and do this test prep, and sometimes twice if they need it.
Well, I mean, everybody needs a little extra help from time to time, because there's no such thing as an equality of outcome for every person.
And then we dramatically increased the licensure rate for our staff of color by doing this.
So then by your preamble, I then have to assume that if you are I still hate the phrase, person of color, then you can assume to be both poor and without extra time. Is that what I'm to understand? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Right. And so then now we have created a bench that has the one criteria qualification that is preventing them from getting that supervisor role. We took care of that barrier for them.
Well, presumably they took care of it for themselves by studying and passing the test. Although obviously you facilitated a lot easier way to get it. So again, credit where credit is due. It's just interesting that you come back and classify everything on the basis of race, but then why should I be surprised at this point? Thank you, Keeverdam. Right takes a shot. No, good Lord. Do not. Okay. The right drinking game is never going to be a thing on this show. Okay. Never, ever, never, ever. Because I do not want on my conscience several alcoholic poisoning deaths. Just leave that to me in the pepper jacks when I do a TEDx.
So how do you do that in your organization?
I don't know.
How do you think about those barriers? And then you bring in your capital, your resources to support filling in that gap.
Okay. Increasing the skill set of your employees to service the goals and the ends of the company. Again, not a novel idea. I mean, it's not a bad example, I guess, if that's how you look at it. But you brought this back around to the whole anti-racism thing by sidewise accusing anybody who's not white of inherently being either poor or lacking time to do studying. So, I mean, that's an interesting way to bring it back around into the subject. I don't know if it does you any favors. Thank you again, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Oh, thank you. I've been here for only 10 minutes and the room is already spinning, right? I'm not officer drunk. Yeah. Don't make a drinking game out of anything that I do. Really, it's a bad idea. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. The right drinking game, sponsored by Dasani. Yes, if you're going to take a shot of anything, take a shot of water, orange juice, unadulterated water or orange juice, okay? Because screwdrivers are a thing.
And Gamel, that accounts for increasing social capital. That's not under the apply equity aspect to building.
No, I mean, obviously all these things have an equity lens to them, but applying an equity lens.
Applying an equity lens means bringing it back around to skin color after you've given an entire diatribe that has nothing to do with skin color. I mean, that's step 4. Step 4 is apply an equity lens. And she actually, took that step at the very end there. That's how you apply an equity lens. Frame it by race somehow. Fit that round peg into the square hole at the very end. That's how you apply an equity lens.
Is thinking about that one thing, but applying it broadly to everything, right? So it's not just about the gaps. Now you want to think about every type of institution that you have in the organization.
You want to apply Yes. Again, bring everything under the umbrella of race somehow. Work it around somehow. You can find a way. There is always a way.
And those institutions might be formal processes, but they might be informal things, right? Your hiring process, your onboarding process, that's a formal institution that you have.
Tell us how you want to apply an equity lens to your hiring process, please.
Your policies and procedures are
Yes.
formal institutions.
Yes.
And then you have to think about your informal ones, right? Does everybody go to lunch at a certain hour, right?
Good. Okay. I honestly think it's becoming like some kind of nervous tick for her or something. I mean, more so than the usual.
When we were all in person, right?
Good Lord.
Do you all go out to lunch? And at those lunches, do people build relationships with each other? Do they talk about work? Do they make decisions that are going to have an impact on power and projects in the organization?
Or, and here's a thought, my lunch hour is mine. My lunch hour is not the business's. My lunch hour is not a work hour. So maybe you shouldn't try to have dominion over my time. But then we are talking about businesses in the modern day. Well, businesses in general, sure. Thank you, Point Curation. Got equity lenses. The world is now equally blurry. Yes, isn't it though? It makes everything so easy to understand because you can't understand anything. It's all just sophistry and pablum.
Well, then
Where do you eat the lunch? Where do you eat the lunch?
How much that lunch costs, right? All of those are.
So it's the business's responsibility to micromanage my lunch hour to increase social capital by applying an equity lens, right?
Going to be institutions that have an impact on access, have an impact on the overall organization. And so what you want to do is you want to apply an equity lens to all of it.
Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Wait, you guys get an hour? I know, right? Right. This whole thing reminds me, my little thing there about my lunch hour is mine. There's a kind of, guilty pleasure movie from the 90s called A Civil Action with John Travolta. And there's this great scene in there where the actor whose name suddenly escapes me because I can't remember his name. It'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it. Anyway, there's this character who's this lawyer, and he takes all of his lunches deep in the bowels of the library all by himself. And he's sitting there listening to a baseball game. And some guy comes up to have to deliver him some work files. And he's like, this place is crazy. I get 1 hour a day that's all on my own. And I think of that hour as sacred. And he's looking at this junior clerk or whatever with death in his eyes. And the guy's like, I'm sorry. It's a great little scene. And it really says something that I agree with in the long run. And somewhere, someone in the chat will remember that actor's name because he said he's a famous actor. He was the mystery priest at the beginning of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, uncredited role. And my memory sucks.
So you want to look at your forms, your procedures.
Robert Duvall. That's what it was. Robert Duvall. Holy cats.
Your policies, those informal institutions, and you say, okay, do the people that have the most amount of vulnerabilities in an organization have the same amount of access to this thing the way that it exists now?
Okay, how do you measure who has the most vulnerabilities? All right, what elements define someone as having or being more vulnerable than someone else?
And if they don't, you change it. And if changing it is not going to work, do you stop it? Do you end it? And do you create a new thing?
Give me an example of rearranging reality on the basis of people's lunch hours. Like what? What is being denied access, or what access is being denied to someone on the basis of what elements, and how would the company change that? Can you give me an active example? Because I'm having a hard time using my imagination for something that would exist on the temporal plane.
Right? So you want to just think about all of those different ways and just think about it for everything that you do. So we changed our job descriptions. We reduced the unnecessary barriers in our our job postings
How?
around education and years of experience.
How?
And thought to ourselves, why are these here?
Because you don't want to waste the company's time training up somebody on subject matter and skills that you want them to possess before they enter the workforce? Maybe. Thank you, Chicago Mike. I just want to go to work and cut open a fish. Chicago Mike, are you a fishmonger? That was the lesser known Iron Man enemy from one of the movies. Okay, nerds will get the reference.
If they're here for a reason because of a regulation, right? Like that independent licensure, well, then there's nothing we can do about that, right? But if it says 5 years of experience,
Yeah.
why 5?
I don't know why. I mean, presumably you put that there before you removed it. So you should have the answer to that question. What was your rationale in having that prerequisite in the first place? I mean, you posted the job, so
Why not 6? Why not 4?
I don't know. You tell me. It's your job posting.
Why not 3.5? Who picked 5? Right? Where did 5 come from? Did it come out of a hat?
It came from HR, presumably, you know, the people you hired to do that stuff. Why are you asking me? You know, abstractly.
Probably, right? So then think about it. What is it about what you're saying in those minimum requirements that's actually true to the job? And
I don't know. It's your job posting. If you don't care about there being 5 years experience, okay, you take it out. And did you get more quality applicants as a result? I mean, certainly you would increase the pool of applicants, but did you go with someone for the job who lacked that kind of experience? What was the end result of taking that out? How did that benefit your organization?
And what is the minimum requirement as opposed to your ideal candidate? And so we took all of those things and we applied it.
So aim for the bottom is what you're saying.
An equity lens, and we reduced those barriers, and we reduced it. We now over 70% of our jobs no longer require a master's, and close to half our jobs no longer require a bachelor's as a minimum requirement.
So applying an equity lens is lowering expectations. I just want to let that sit for a second. Applying an equity lens is lowering expectations. Got it.
Because we recognize in a lot of the roles that we have in our organization that life experience can go a long way. And
how do you measure life experience? Okay, a diploma, a job history, accreditation, these are things that tangibly demonstrate someone having put the time and the effort into achieving something on the basis of whatever sphere of the world they're working in. Okay? Someone walking in off the street and saying, I've done this my entire life without having any evidence of it. That's the standard you're talking about now. You're talking about a trust me story versus something that can actually be verified. Okay, that's why they have things and require things like certifications and diplomas. Do you think, are you going to remove the certification process or the certification requirement in your own organization to become a manager? Because that is exactly the same process you're talking about here. Someone should just be able to walk up to you in your own company and say, I should be a manager because I have life experience. You cannot deny my life experience just because I don't have a certification. Why put your employees through a certification process for jobs that require a certification if you're now going to tell us that having a certification is not a required prerequisite to get a job in the first place?
And that getting that degree is helpful and tells us something about that person, but it also is something that isn't completely necessary to being able to get the job done, and that we put the investment in the training of our staff because we want them to do it the wayside way, not whatever that institution, that college that they went to is the way that they want to do it, right?
The Wayside Way. All right. Well, if you're a mental health organization, how does the Wayside Way deviate from standard mental health practices as taught in schools? I mean, I'm not even a mental health practitioner or anything, but I would love to know the answer to that question. If you're going to say, we don't want anyone tainted with the wrong way of thinking about mental health, we want them to think only our way, because that sounds mentally healthy.
So there was a priority there that we made a particular decision about prioritizing for our organization. Go ahead, Amy.
I just also want to add to the equity lens. We have a question in the chat about, we did not, a nice call in from, I think her name is Tanya. And she's saying we didn't say our pronouns. So my pronouns are she, her.
Yeah, let's take a moment, everyone, and address the important issues in the room. Nobody, let us not, none of us be confused. Jesus.
I think her name is Tanya. And she's saying we didn't say our pronouns. So my pronouns are she, hers. Thank you for that call, and I super appreciate it. I really wish we had said our pronouns at the beginning, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And
do you feel better now? Do you feel better now? Do you think Tanya is happy now that she's policed you on what you have or have not said about things that are functionally irrelevant to this entire presentation and conversation? Okay, well, you have a habit of giving power over to others judging you for your lack of moral fiber, so I guess I shouldn't have expected anything less.
When Wayside, Wayside is one of the first nonprofit agencies with a campus that allowed kids who were trans and who wanted to live in a program where the gender they were not assigned at birth, the gender identity they wanted to be, that they could live in that program. So if they were assigned,
wanted to be, are you saying it's a choice? I don't know if that's a point of offense for anybody, but I'm just being funny here. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Are those Karen glasses she's wearing? They certainly look like it. They certainly look like it. A little bit. Just a little bit. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. I got hired with my experience sight unseen over someone with a bachelor degree. Business has been at an all-time low, but at least they feel better. Yeah. You know, and that's not me denigrating people who actually have, you know, life experience that could be translated over. That do just fine. I mean, that's fine. But if she's going to be poo-pooing the idea of having degrees, certifications, and so on as prerequisites for getting a job, if they're going to roll the dice on a new employee actually possessing the ability, knowledge, and skill necessary to do the job, on the chance they're going to have to spend extra time of other people's valuable time to teach this person what they would ideally already know before they enter. If that is their game plan, that is a lousy game plan. If you're not talking about just like entry-level positions where you're basically going to be learning the skills as you go kind of deal, if you're talking about middle management or, you know, even more experienced type areas, I think you're doing your company a disservice if that is your game plan. Again, I do not have an MBA, but just a little common sense inside.
Female at birth, at that time, we were not allowed to let them be in the male program. But if they were assigned male at birth and they wanted to move as a female, they could be in our female programs.
If they were assigned male at birth and wanted to go into our female Okay, I'm not going to bother.
And we did that. And after a while, I had been asked at another setting to talk about what impacted kind of talking about trans and non-binary youth. And somebody asked me about what we did in the documentation and what we did in our paperwork. And I said, it's such a great question.
It is a great question. Please tell us what you do in your paperwork and how this applies an equity lens.
Because you change the paperwork, you start to change the culture. You
change the paperwork, You start to change the culture. Yes, if you actually write down in black and white policies and procedures that value certain elements of people over others or make exceptions for some people over others based on certain attributes, you'll change the culture, all right. You will change the culture. Whether or not you're changing it for the better is a completely separate question.
Sounds a little bit silly, but once we started to write down for people things like gender identity, and we changed that both for our employees and we changed it for our clients. We also made sure all of our bathrooms were accessible. Once we started to do those things, then the conversation became cleaner because everybody understood this is our value system and this is what we're doing. So we really recommend that as an equity lens. Just paying attention to how you document is a really great way to start.
Okay, I would love to see how you document your hiring practices to provide those most vulnerable to such things with an advantage. Yeah, you've classified some nebulous concept of people as being the most vulnerable regarding the whole lunch hour thing. So how does that factor into your hiring, retention, and promotion practices? I would love to know.
And then we have a couple of questions that I want to be able to get to. So
Whoa, what was, okay. Somebody was clearing their throat. That wasn't me. That was the recording. Somebody's going nuts on there.
maybe Gamal, talk a little bit about your last aspect of the 5 elements, and then maybe we'll do some of the audience questions.
Okay, we'll get through the 5th element momentarily. I still want to try to keep this to about an hour and a half broadcast, so we still got about 30 minutes left. So hopefully they'll get through the 5th element here fairly quickly. Maybe we'll get a couple of their internal questions and see if they're funny, and then we'll wrap up.
Absolutely. So this is pretty straightforward. It's measure your data and hold yourself accountable. I don't want to rely on just anecdotes to say, oh, it feels better now or it feels worse now. Well, what does that mean?
You don't want to rely on anecdotes. You just said you were going to divest yourself of prerequisites of experience years and certifications for a life experience model. Could you contradict yourself any more times?
Right? So you want to, it's the last one, but it's actually kind of the all-encompassing one. And you need to do kind of first, right? Because you need to establish a baseline. So
Wait. So the 5th step is the first step. Time is a flat circle.
you need to understand what are the metrics that are going to show you whether you're making progress. In this
Yes.
and that might be turnover and breaking down turnover numbers by demographics.
Might be breaking it down by demographics. What was the title of this presentation again? How to build an anti-racist organization. The entire premise is demographics. What do you mean might?
It might be managers of color.
It might be. Why the might? There is no might here. There's no uncertainty. That is the entire focus of this thing, isn't it?
Right. It might be, well, we do a diversity survey in our organization. So we ask specific questions related to DEI issues and we measure how well we continue to do on those or not.
What questions are you asking of your employees? Are you asking them to define their race, to define their gender? Are you making any business or employee decisions or workforce decisions on the basis of race or gender? Please tell me whether or not you are doing this, because that would be an amazing public declaration for your organization.
We also, you might have an employee engagement survey or a staff satisfaction survey that you do in your organization. And what are those results when you then break them down by demographics? Are you even asking demographics when you're asking that survey?
Should you be asking about demographics? Are you going to say in your paperwork that you are using racial demographics as a decision point in your company's policies and practices? Please, please answer that question.
Right. So you want to just think about what those things are and you want to say to yourself, what is it going to mean if we are successful at being an anti-racist organization?
No. What does it mean? No. What does it mean to be an anti-racist organization? You've talked about the steps, so give us the ideal picture. What does an anti-racist organization look like? What does it mean? You should already know, right?
And for Wayside, it means lowering our turnover of staff of color, which we were able to do.
How? How were you able to do that?
What policies or practices did you put into place to achieve that goal based wholly on the racial demographics of your workforce? What did you do?
It means increasing our managers of color, which we made tremendous gains in and sustain those gains.
How? How did you increase the number of managers of color? I can only imagine by what metric you achieved that goal.
Still have some places to go on that. And it's also for us, again, we're, behavioral health organizations, we're really all in on that courageous conversations part. That's a culture metric for us too. And so it's something where we, what is this, how comfortable are people engaging in courageous conversations and how well do they do them? What skill sets do they have in them?
So how are you monitoring the conversations taking place between your employees? And then how do you measure them for their courageousness quotient? I'm dying to know.
Right. And for us, that's going to show us whether or not we're getting to that end goal of getting to being an anti-racist organization.
Okay, so if you do not have the correct amount of skin colors in a particular area in your business, how do you solve for that problem? Who are you either allowing or denying opportunities to in order to achieve that goal? And on what basis are you making those decisions? Now I am being facetious when I ask that question because there really can be only one answer. However, not hearing it directly from our speaker, even though she's saying everything but the obvious answer, is very telling to me. And I think it should be to anybody else listening to this.
And before I hop into the Q&A, which there are some good ones in here that we want to get to, I want to point out for the participants that this conversation in and of itself is a wonderful example of the kinds of things that you want to be able to have honest, transparent conversations about within your organization. The same kinds of things that we're talking about here are things that it's helpful if you can talk about with your colleagues, and having a facilitator does allow you to have those conversations when people bring different emotions and backgrounds and histories and experiences with power structures to that conversation.
Yes, and we just happen to have a facilitator service that we provide through a reasonable fee.
So as someone who has listened to Amy and Kelly and Gamel talk about this before.
Even though Gamel has had, Kelly has had a very, very small amount. Is Kelly because Amy's the Karen, the lady that was just talking. I don't know. Anyway, the older lady has barely had a chance to say anything during this entire deal. I mean, if you look at the amount of actual talk time, it's been white lady and Brazilian lady, and then black lady. And trust me, I'm only saying this because this is important to them, so I might as well say it out loud. That has been the hierarchy so far, right? Isn't that interesting, given the subject matter?
I've understood that the goal is to have the kind of organization where the things we're talking about here in this panel can be woven into the fabric of the everyday life of your organization. That can be really powerful.
Yes, it can be really powerful to value skin color over everything else, make decisions in your workforce on the basis of skin color in hiring, retention, and promotion practices, and walk on eggshells every single day on the off chance that you'll say something that someone decides is a problem and then decides to have a courageous conversation with you about and guilt and shame you into compliance, whether you did anything wrong or not. Yes, it can have a very, very powerful effect on your organization. Thank you, Duck Dog. They're all Karens. Yep. And I have no idea what Wayside does. This is not a good advertisement for them, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And you could do that as well with the metrics. So you want to make sure to be transparent about those too. So it's not just measure it, you know what I mean? Put it on a piece of paper and put that paper in a closet, right? You want to tell everybody where you are on these things and hold yourself accountable by being transparent about those metrics.
Okay. Well, if I actually cared enough, and maybe I will, I don't know. I would love to see Wayside's metrics on their managers of color, where they were, where they are, and the documentation of the process they went through to achieve that goal. Because if that is the metric, there's really only one option, isn't there?
And share them amongst the staff so that they know. And when you're not meeting a certain metric, be transparent about that and own that that's where we are and what you're doing to then address it. And I also just want to, for my pronouns of she, her as well.
Oh, thank God. I mean, I was worried there for a second. I hadn't heard you say it, so I wasn't sure how to think of you in the abstract when you weren't around.
So I just want to make sure to
Yeah. And mine are also she, her.
Oh, golly, gee whiz. I can't imagine what I would have thought otherwise.
And
Ditto.
Kelly,
Great. So it's completely moot, effectively. Okay.
thank you. So actually, while we're on this conversation about conversations, how do you cultivate and create this kind of space for DEI conversations? Sometimes it can feel as though, particularly for smaller, mid-sized businesses, for nonprofits, for organizations that are volunteer run, it can feel A, really hard to carve out the space for those conversations, and B, it can feel like it takes a really long time to make progress on DEI initiatives, much less anti-racism efforts.
Because those two things are so worlds apart from one another. If you actually pay attention, they're 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other with a different label on it.
So how do you create the space for those conversations, and how do you make progress on your organization's DEI and anti-racist goals when you're either largely volunteer run or you're a smaller organization?
I would love to know the answer to that question. That was the whole basis of this whole presentation. So is someone going to speak up, and will it be Amy?
I think what I would say about carving out space is that it's a little bit like anything that's hard and meaningful, like let's say exercise.
Okay.
Exercise is sometimes hard and also really meaningful to positive health, right?
Yes.
And so part of it is a decision and a plan,
Yeah.
and then doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's we also know this about voting, right? If we want people to vote, if we help them make a plan to vote, they're more likely to go vote. Right.
Right.
So I do this with exercise all the time. Like I set out my running shoes and my running like chain for the dog, because I use a special chain for him, and whatever. So I know that I'm going to go run.
Right.
And the same is true for conversations. So when you set a
you have to get the chain out for your dog to have a conversation, or are you calling someone a dog? Or is the chain metaphorical for something? Chicago Mike, your pronoun is ditto. Actually, that would I can't say I've ever heard that one before, if that were true. But sure, ditto. Oh Lord. Okay. So getting ready to go for a run with your dog is like having a conversation. Do I have to wear my conversation shoes? Do I have to have my conversation chain ready?
space, whether it's a space virtually or maybe we could have a space in person.
What a novel idea, an in-person conversation space.
You want the space to feel like it's reasonable, that there's time, that there's a sense of this being important. One of the really important things we're very grateful for is the leadership at Wayside, and not just their support, but their true leadership on anti-racism work.
Is that the dog in the background trying to have a conversation with you? Does it have its conversation chain? Does that not make it conversation time in this person-to-person space?
And so basically our CEO completely has been at the forefront of this work and really a leader in this work. And that's really mattered to all of us.
Wow.
So I think those are some of the ways you start. And then the other piece is you set some guidelines. So we have guidelines about how we have these conversations. One of the most important is we really seek to have a brave space, but not necessarily a safe space.
A brave space, but not necessarily a safe space. Now, that's a new concept I don't think I've heard before. A brave space, but not a safe space. Ooh, what happens there?
I don't necessarily think I can make it safe for other people because I don't know enough about them to know what that would involve.
Yeah, but if they decide that they are unsafe, don't they then have to have a courageous conversation with you to tell you that you've made them feel unsafe and therefore you at fault? So what was this? The brave space is just an insurance policy. While you're standing in this room, your feelings are what, irrelevant? That would be an interesting concept. Is that what you mean? Because that's what it sounds like you mean.
I trust that if I make it a brave space, that people will be brave enough to take care of themselves if they feel unsafe.
Are you making assumptions about people's mental fragility? How dare you?
And I also suggest that sometimes we use the word safe when we actually mean uncomfortable.
Sometimes? Sometimes you say. Well, you know, many a truth is spoken in jest is the phrase that comes to mind, even though I know she's not joking, at least in her mind.
And when we're uncomfortable, we're growing, and we should get more comfortable with uncomfortable. Another t-shirt.
Yes, bring apology back, get more comfortable with uncomfortable. A new t-shirt. Yeah, a new marketing opportunity. Mm-hmm. When we're uncomfortable, we grow. Is that how that works? I could go to the extreme and think of someone being tortured and ask, gosh, when they're done with that, have they grown as a person? But I think that would be a bit hyperbolic.
So those are some of the ways we want to do it. The other thing is, like anything important, you know, I am a semi-runner and I'm a terrible, slow, sloggy runner, but over time, I always get better. And so
then how are you currently a slow and sloggy runner? Shouldn't you say, I used to be? Or is your progress and your effort just continuously mediocre? Because I could honestly believe that if that were the case.
The same is true for anti-racist practice.
Oh.
It's a practice. And I actually really think of this as daily work every single day.
You don't say, with your daily actions, emails to your employees of things they can do to make sure they're totally being not racist?
For me to work on. And I really, you know, come along with us because that's what it really is a work of being able to be present for it, look at your work as an anti-racist and how you can really have impact on the world.
Anti-racism is a practice. Look at yourself as an anti-racist. You know, if I didn't already think that movements like these are effectively religions without the magisterium, I would think she was talking about a religion.
And if you do that in a way that's genuine, people want to make the time. They want to have this conversation. They want to deepen. I think at the beginning is the hardest part. I hate beginnings. I never like to start anything. I just
yeah, like brushing your hair.
Just want to be in it. So I recommend getting yourself to the fun place, which is the in it.
The fun place, which is the in it. I mean, several directions you could go with that. Okay, I'm only going to give this a couple more minutes, then I will take comments and questions from you guys, and then we'll wrap up.
And I think Amy has addressed a couple of aspects that tie into two different questions that we have about having conversations that feel appropriate for a workplace setting.
Okay. Yeah, what are conversations that are appropriate for a workplace setting?
given the parameters we've been given so far. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. That made me picture the torture scene in the first Craig Bond film. The knotted rope hits his nuts, and he says, "I've really grown as a person." I was thinking of the, I think it was the torture scene in Rambo 2 or Rambo 3, whichever one, where he's like chained up to the bed frame, the mattress frame thing. I think it is. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Okay, yeah, a couple more minutes here.
With questions of unprofessionalism, inappropriate harassing,
Yes.
Possible actual safety issues.
Okay.
And I'll take a pause here. This is not my area of expertise, but I know that from working with a number of different businesses on HR-related communications issues, trying to create an environment where different communications styles and ways of sharing information, and the fact that emotion does exist when it comes to this topic, particularly for people of color, as they are sharing their experiences and their perceptions, and helping people understand that there are different models and that those models are not necessarily unprofessional.
Okay, well then, can somebody give me an example of a professional workplace conversation around race? I'd love to know.
And looking at things through the lens that Gamel was talking about earlier of how am I defining what's professional versus what's uncomfortable? That's not, I'd welcome Gamel or Amy to speak to that, but I have noticed a significant number of challenges for businesses come at that intersection of differing styles and perceptions of what is professional appropriate in the workplace.
Yeah, what is an allowable amount of discomfort for an employee that doesn't cross over then into either harassment or creating a, what's the word I'm looking for? What is it? A contentious work environment or hostile work? That's the word, hostile. Yeah. So how do you measure out a acceptable amount of discomfort versus harassment, hostile work environment? Where does that line? How do you know when that line has been crossed? And is it your place to define that line when you're talking about someone's individual perceptions and feelings in the workplace? That is an interesting conversation I would love to have abstractly through an equity lens. And I'd hold myself accountable. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop there because I'm not quite sure there's much else to be gained from this. I've given it the better part of its hour-long runtime. And so I'd like to give the remaining few minutes to you guys to see if you have anything you'd like to say or add to the courageous conversation we're having here today. Johnny Hellcat, thank you again. Hostile, don't you mean brave? Well, again, 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. I mean, there's a safe space and then there's a brave space. And the brave space is where you can be brave and where the company's still not going to be liable for anything that takes place within that space. Because you have to be brave. If you're in this space and you're not brave, that's your problem, I think. Yeah. Mr. Tickle Trunk, right? There's an edition of the movie Scarface. I think it's like the deluxe edition, or it's something called, or it's the My Little Friend edition. Anyway, maybe it's the platinum edition. I own it. Whatever it is, I own it. And it has available as options you can put as you watch the film, a bullet counter and an F-bomb counter. So as the movie goes, it will rack up all the totals of how many bullets are fired and how many swear words, specific swear words, are said. I feel as though I wouldn't task anybody with the hellish journey of counting up how many rights were said during the course of these two streams, but I got to imagine the numbers got to be somewhere in the high double digits at this point, if not into the triple. An hour long of people just ending every sentence with a right. Let's see. Nicholas Daly, must listen to POCs for clout, while me having friends of color is white supremacy until I tell them I have a grandparent who survived a Holocaust. I need you to show me on the doll where it's etc. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it cuts off there. Where it's not racist, maybe, or anti-racist. Yeah. Thank you, Spittlebuggy. Oh, thank you for the comments, Spittlebuggies. I'm on reflex here. Sorry, guys. If I didn't mention before, I got ridiculously little sleep last night, so I'm kind of running on fumes already. Scribelight, is this all part of NWO is now? New World Order? I don't know. Have they wrestled recently? And if you get that lame reference, then you're as lame as I am, I guess. Texas Attorney General Secret Agent, it's triple digits easily. Could be. I mean, it really was kind of a mantra at a certain point, wasn't it? Let's see. Asia Research Directorate. Yeah, I'm not asking for special treatment, but I work with machinery and want to be instructed on safe operation. I obviously came into the middle of a conversation there. But was it a courageous conversation? Chicago Mike, last week I asked about content of character. If they promote content of character, then their business will fail. I guess by their model, because they never really talked. I mean, save for talking about training up their employees for skills that were necessary to improve the overall mission of the organization, they nearly didn't talk about people's skills so much, because they looped it all the way back around again to the color of their skin. So, let's see. And Keeverdam says, buy Scribe stuff. Yeah, something I almost always forget to mention of my own volition. In the description, you can find a link to my Teespring store, where you can find mugs with my face on it, and Ted Excellence t-shirts, and Pepperjack t-shirts, and Moonbase t-shirts, and a Got It coronavirus face mask, which is probably not the wisest mask to wear, but I made it anyway as a joke. So if you decide to buy it, well, that was your choice. Either way, I appreciate taking a look at it. Purchasing is not required, obviously, but yeah, I almost never talk about that because I always forget. It's a lot of these YouTube sort of mainstays aren't really do not end up being something that I focus on all that much, with the exception of at least today, my subscriber count. In the last several days since I appeared on the Kurt Metzger podcast, Can't Get Right, which you can find on YouTube, I've had a boost in subscribership, which I'm very appreciative of. I am now, at the time of this, me saying so, 12 subscribers away from 5,000. And I am coming up on my 5th year as a YouTuber on October 11th. That'll be my anniversary of the first time I ever posted a video on YouTube. So I've been looking forward to at least hopefully hitting that goal by then. I think at this rate I will. And so again, as a preamble to that event, I appreciate every one of you for supporting this channel, attending my streams, commenting on my videos, and on all this time. I thank you so much. Speaking of which, thank you, Point Curation. Get yourself a mug with Scribe's mug on it. Right. Yeah. Oh, and be sure to turn the mug around, because my name/logo is there too. I had somebody recently that didn't understand or didn't know that that was there until they looked at it a third time. And this is after they took it out of the box. You know who you are. Also, as I mentioned at the top of the show, and again, we'll mention now, at 5 p.m. tonight on this channel, and that is also 8 p.m. Eastern time, Sister Scribe will be joining me as we watch the feature-length presentation of The Wasp Woman, a public domain film from 1959 by Roger Corman. Apparently, it was never copyrighted. So just like Night of the Living Dead, as soon as it went out into the public, it became public domain, which is an amazing thing to me. But hey, someone else's mistake becomes all of our benefit as we get to watch a cheesy sci-fi horror movie from the late 50s. There you go. A couple more things. Nobody Not Me. Congratulations, Scribe. Thank you, Nobody Not Me. Appreciate it. Again, I never got into this thinking that I'd have more than maybe 5 or 6 subscribers. I didn't think that anybody would pay attention to anything I had to say. I was just doing it on a lark. But I have been overwhelmed over the years, and I am continually overwhelmed, both by your guys' attention and participation. certainly your generosity, and also, as the recent conclusion of Lords of the Night showed, your loyalty, your time and your dedication to checking out my stuff, Satsu, Ranting Monkey, Sinatra Says, Drunken Uncle, Irate Alex, Tailed Feature, Weebo Jones, Polydub, Minions of the Zoo. Just, I could go on forever. And the fact that I could go on forever still, as I take it all in, still overwhelms me with just how many people I've met, how many connections I've made, and consequently have been made as a consequence of our chat and our shows and our streams and the events that have occurred and everything else. And I'll never be able to say it enough. Thank you guys so much for everything that you've done for me and for all of us in our little Lords of the Night circle, just to be very summation about it. But with that, I'm going to wrap this up here because we're at the time that I wanted to be at. So, everyone, thank you for joining me for this Sunday stream. I hope you got something out of it, right? And if, at the very least, thank you, Chicago Mike, for the Bravo Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox. Wowie, wow, wow. Thank you, Dogcat Fox. Wowie, wow, wow. Okay, now that makes it like the 1000th right that's been said today. That was him saying right. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed it as much as it was. Hope you learned something. If you did, please leave a like. If you have something to add to the courageous conversation, please leave a comment. And with that, looking forward to seeing you guys tonight for Scribelight Drive-In Theater, Wasp Woman, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And as always, everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you, thank you. Thank you times 3,000 for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll hopefully see you tonight. And if not, I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.